Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. Let's go over some bourbon terms that have no meaning. They're not regulated terms, right? The government does not have a classification for them. At least one of them may be protected by the Truth in Labeling Act, but generally they are just marketing tools. We'll go over the first one, small batch. You've seen that on bourbon before, small batch. It was made up by Booker No as a marketing technique. What does it mean to you? Think about it for a second. You think it means, I would think, is what I used to think it means, that if a bourbon distiller blends 1,000 barrels together, they dump 1,000 barrels, and from that 1,000 barrels they bottle, right? They blend 1,000 barrels. That if it says small batch, they're doing less than 1,000. Not only less than 1,000, but 10, 2, 3, 100, 200. What did you think it meant? They could do 1,000 barrels of their stuff. They could come out with a different edition and say this is a small batch of that and do 2,000, and nothing would happen to them, okay? It's a fake term. What they try and imply and what some say they do, and if they say they do it, I guess they have to do it. But if they're saying, look, on our small batch, we pre-select the barrels, and there's kind of the better barrels, and then we only use 200 of them, and we blend those. I'll tell you this, the less barrels you use to blend something, the less barrels you have to blend the whiskey, the less consistent it's going to be. The more barrels, the easier it is to get a consistent flavor. Either way, small batch has no teeth. All right, what's next? Rare. What does that imply? Rare. Not a lot of it, right? They only made a few bottles, and now it's rare. If you get your hands on this, you got something because it's rare. You know what? Eagle Rare, there's a lot of rare. Eagle Rare is made just as fast as they can make it. It's a fake term. It doesn't have to be rare. Again, I can have a flagship bourbon that I make 2 million bottles a year, and I could come out with another one and say this is rare and make 5 million bottles. Fake term. Vintage, reserve, distiller's selection, limited edition. Again, you know what that conjures up in your head, but it has no meaning. It has no meaning. Distiller selection. The distiller, whiskey isn't really made from the distiller. Right? He's following a recipe, and there's a kind of a process that's almost automatically done now. He tastes it a lot, makes sure and checks the meters and makes sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. But where bourbon is really made is in the barrels, in the aging, in the selection of where it's put, by the blenders blending it. Okay, the distiller is just distilling it mathematically, so to speak. I worked in several distilleries, so I know what I'm saying here. The distiller just follows rules to make a bourbon within the can't be distilled higher 160 proof and all that. It's made later. The flavors you know about is all made after that. The distillers does not sit there and taste barrels and pick them for that's not any big place. Right? They may do it in little places. Either way, whether they're doing it in a small craft distillery or not, it's not a legal term and it has no meaning. Foolproof. That one's a tricky one. Now, let's say the most you can put whiskey, the highest proof you could put it in a barrel is 125. Right? It's illegal to put bourbon in a barrel higher than 125. It used to be 110. There's different proofs. Everybody puts it in. They just can't put it above 125. Let's use the 125. Let's say you put it in the barrel at 125. You put it on the top floor of the warehouse where generally the water's going to evaporate before the alcohol. It's going to come out higher. So you put it in 125. Now it's 130. What you would think that foolproof means is now you bottle it 130. But all foolproof means is that you bottle it at what you put it in the barrel at. That's what foolproof is. So if I put it in at 125 and it goes to 130, I could water it back down to 125 or 120 or 110 or whatever I put it in there at and call it foolproof. All right? If you want it to be the way I think most people think about that, how it comes out of the barrel with no water at it, then you have to get cask strength. All right? Cask strength. Careful with those terms. Very or old. Very old. Very this, old this, old, it means nothing, right? Old granddad means nothing. Old overholt means nothing. Very old, it means nothing. It's just terms, it's meaningless terms. Reserve, Woodford Reserve, right? This is a reserve. What does reserve mean? It's special. There's not a lot of it made. It's a cut above all the rest. Means nothing. Means take the word out, and there it is. All right. Sounds good. I'm not against it. It sounds very old. Probably sounds good. A lot of things sound good, but it has no meaning. It means nothing. If you like the name, good. Don't buy it because you think it means something. Single barrel. First single barrel, 1984, was Blanton's. Okay. That is not a regulated term. That is kind of covered by the Truth in Labeling Act. But here's the deal. What does single barrel mean to you? Single barrel means that there's one barrel, and then hopefully somebody thinks that barrel tastes really good. So instead of blending it, right, in the blend to make their regular whiskey, they make a special single barrel of that, and they just barrel that or bottle that barrel with no other barrels blended in. Okay, that is Truth in Labeling. They kind of have to do that. There's no government law on that, but I guess they could get in trouble if someone found that out and had a lawsuit. However, it doesn't cover, for example, if I buy an MGP whiskey or a whiskey from somebody else. Let's say I'm selling whiskey, but I don't distill it. I buy someone else's whiskey. And if I buy a barrel of theirs and I bottle that, that's single barrel. But what if I take a bottle of theirs and I finish it, all right? I put it in another barrel, let's say held port wine, all right? Now, that is coming out of, technically, I guess that's coming out of two barrels, right? It's not the original single barrel. But if I bottle that one out of the barrel with the ruby wine after I stuck it in there for a second maturation or whatever, I could also call that single barrel if I don't blend that. So it's not necessarily the original barrel. It could be after you have, hell, you could finish it in 7 different barrels. And the last barrel, if you just bottle that, that's single barrel. I think it's a little misleading. That one's not too bad, I guess. Handcrafted. I believe, and you could Google it, I think, Angel's Envy's been sued a couple times. I think they were sued for saying their rye was handcrafted. Their rye, they don't make the rye, right? The rye is made by MGP. Neither here nor there. Handcrafted sounds like, everything's handcrafted. I mean, you're touching everything. Either way, just to make this short and sweet, it means nothing. It's handcrafted means absolutely nothing. If something doesn't say handcrafted and something does say handcrafted, there's no difference. There's no meaning to it. And this one's a big one. All right. You want to know who makes the whiskey. So you look on there, and it says bottled by. So you're like, there it is. Look, bottled by Joe's Whiskey. Joe's making it. He bottled it. No. Bottled by means exactly that. Bottled by. Right? I could bottle Jim Beam stuff. I can have a bottling company. They might not have enough bottles to get their stuff going, especially in a while back. We had a glass shortage a couple of years ago. So they hire me to bottle it. So bottled by, distilled, brewed, and reviewed. I didn't make it. All right. Also, that's not bad enough. Made by. Made by. If I buy someone else's bourbon, I buy it. And I put distilled, brewed, and reviewed bourbon. Made by and bottled by. Distilled, brewed, and reviewed. I didn't distill it. I didn't do anything. You're going to assume that I made that bourbon, right? It says made by. What it must say, if you're looking for who made it, it's got to be distilled by. Distilled by, all right? If it doesn't say distilled by, if it says made by, if it says bottled by, it's meaningless, okay? It has to say distilled by. A lot of times it'll be distilled and bottled by. That's fine if they're bottling their own stuff. They run out of bottles. No big deal if it says distilled by and then it's bottled by somebody else. A lot of times they won't put that on there. It doesn't matter. It's just confusing. But that one to me is one of the biggest ones because I think that's very confusing and it's very misleading. All right? Made by and bottled by, If you want to know who makes it, it must say distilled by. If you all know any of the other ones that I might have missed, remember that are not regulated terms. There's a million terms. I'll go over the terms that do have meaning in another video, right? But these are what I call fake terms. These are terms that have no teeth. These are terms that sound good and mislead you to think there's something they are not. If there's something else I missed, because I'm not thinking of it at the top of my head right now, please let us know. Right? Put it in the comments and we'll all read it. And I hope you learned something today. And remember, I spent many years at many distilleries. So if you watch enough of these videos, All right. Now I'm trying to get you to watch. I'm trying to get you to subscribe and be part of this army here. You will learn everything I know that I took years and years and years of knowledge, and I keep learning stuff. Uh, and you'll get it all as I think of it, as I talk, as I'm reviewing stuff, and it pops in my head. You're going to get it all. And don't forget, I do a lot of lives on my TikTok channel. So I have a TikTok channel under the same name as this. It's got a whole different type of reviews, different things. It's a whole different platform, and I do a lot of lives on that. So if you want to, and lives, I answer the questions. So people have a million questions, so people learn a lot of stuff from those lives. So go ahead and go over to TikTok as well. Hit that. Follow me on that. You'll get notifications. We have a lot of fun on that. That is a lot of fun. And thank you for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Hope you learned something.